What do Jews believe about the end times? Jewish end time beliefs will shock most Christians because they are different than what we believe will happen. And that's important because what they believe will influence what they do, and what they do is going to influence what will happen in those end times. Because when it comes to end time prophecy, all eyes turn to Israel. It is the epicenter of God's prophetic clock. Tick by tick, moment by moment, events unfolding in and around Israel set the stage for history's grand finale. Most Christians understand that, but there's one question that must be asked. What do Jews, God's chosen people, believe about those end times? This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters, and on this channel, we believe that matters. In fact, what they believe matters more than most realize. What the Jewish people believe about the Antichrist, the rebuilding of the temple, their ultimate salvation, the mark of the beast, dramatically shapes how these events themselves are going to unfold, because they're part of it. Their expectations, hopes, and interpretations of prophecy are not just theoretical curiosities. They're part of the unfolding drama itself. They make the drama happen. So today we're bringing on an expert in Judaism, Eliyahu Adam Berkowitz, a friend of mine. And we're going to talk about exactly what they believe. And then you and I are going to discuss what the impact of that will be. And I have a special surprise. I had a dream last night about what you and I should be doing about it. We'll get to all that today. But here's the twist. Jewish understanding of the end times is based solely on the Hebrew Bible, what Christians know and call the Old Testament. While Christians have two scriptures, the Old and the New Testament, and we are able to interpret the future that was foretold in the Old through the eyes of the New Testament. Jews draw only on the ancient texts of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. That means they are navigating the road ahead without the additional light that the New Testament brings. So we have some big questions. Do they believe in a figure like the Antichrist? What role do they see for the temple playing in the final days? What role do they see for Temple Mount sacrifices or the red heifer ceremony? And how do they view salvation and the coming kingdom? Recently, Last Day's Overcomers, and that's me, Jake McCandless, and Marquis Laughlin, interviewed Eliyahu Adam Berkowitz about red heifers. It was really a fantastic interview, well over an hour, and we're going to share portions of it in 3 or 4 videos over the next month or so. And during that interview, however, I was able to ask Eliyahu some of these questions that I have never gotten answered before. His answers are eye-popping and things that you as a Christian never have thought about. I'm sure of that. And when you do think about them, you're going to see how completely relevant they are to the broader question of end times. So here's my introduction of my friend Eliyahu and that portion of the interview.
Hi, everybody. This is Nelson, and we're so happy to have you here. I see people from like all over, many countries, many states, when we are just as excited as you are to have Eliyahu Berkowitz, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, in our presence today. And he is not the top expert on heifers in the world. That would probably be Rabbi Ariel over in Israel. But I'll tell you, he knows a lot. And I think he is the only one with a book on the subject, which I happen to have right here. And the 3 of us have read it. It's great. It is absolutely great. And it will shed light on the heifers in a way that you just cannot get on the internet. I mean, what you see on the internet is not what the red heifers are really all about. So I highly recommend the book, and we're going to talk about it a little bit today. Let me give you a little background about Eliyahu. He was born in the United States, lived in New York City, was a chef, was a motorcycle rider. He did Aliyah to Israel in 1991, worked on a kibbutz for a while, taking care of baby cows, So he had heifers in his DNA from the very beginning. He is the senior, or one of the senior writers at Israel 365 News. Fisherman, who's on our administrative team, our advisory board, and we're always looking to see what Eliyahu has to say, because there's always good information we like to get out to you guys. So you probably have seen his name in my videos from time to time. He's a great guy. He lives in the Golan, and like I said, now he has this fourth book. So yeah, well, although we agree on a lot of things, there are a couple areas where Christians and Jews may have different opinions.
Okay.
One of them is eschatology. So I want to ask this question because I think a lot of people have the same question that I have, and I know you can answer it for us. So we both believe that in the kingdom of God, there will be a temple that will do sacrifices. Both Christians and Jews believe that.
Yeah.
Where we might differ is that Christians believe that there is a 7-year, at least most Christians believe there's a 7-year period prior to the kingdom of God where a great deal of trouble will happen, a time of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble. And that there will be a wicked world ruler that the Bible refers to as the little horn comes on the scene. What do Jews believe about what we call the Antichrist? What's their take on that?
We have absolutely no tradition that even hints at that. It is a Christian thing and not a Jewish thing. Also, when it comes to times of trouble, especially like you read about in prophecy, the Gog and Magog war, we have a teaching that a positive prophecy will absolutely come to be, and a negative prophecy, we got something to talk about with God. That's what made the difference between Abraham and Noah. Noah was all the nations, and Noah, when God said, "I'm going to destroy the world," he said, "Okay." And when God came to Abraham, he said, "I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah," and he was like, "We got to talk." Okay, so the end of days, we're kind of flexible. Okay, we do not have anything even resembling the temple of the Antichrist.
I'm sure what you just heard is a shock to you. So let's take a moment to talk about both of those things. The term Antichrist itself is not used in the Old Testament, totally a New Testament concept, primarily found in John and Paul's epistles and Revelation. However, the idea of a wicked world ruler who opposes God is found in several Old Testament prophecies. We'll talk about that in a second. Number two, this idea that some prophecies may not come true, that is totally foreign to Christianity. We believe that what God speaks in his word will come to pass. And you can probably begin to get an idea, just hearing this little bit that Eliyahu said, why things are going to unfold the way they are in the end times, if these are the beliefs of the Jewish people. So let's get to the passages that talk about that wicked world ruler. These passages are there in the Old Testament. So begin to think why they don't associate these with an Antichrist. And these passages include all of Daniel 7, that speaks of the little horn, Daniel 8, the little horn who exalts himself, Daniel 9, the he who enforces the covenant, Daniel 11, the king who exalts himself over every other god. I bet you noticed a pattern. All of these are found in the book of Daniel. If you follow this channel, you know that many Jews are forbidden to read Daniel by their rabbis. The reason given is that it's sealed until the end times. It is also the book that gives the countdown to the Messiah and shows that he came in the first century. And you probably realize that could also play a role in the forbidding of the reading, couldn't it? And for those who follow our channel for a very long time, you know the story about my good friend Lee, who was Jewish, and he and I did a Bible study on Daniel. And when he saw that timeline, it opened his eyes, and he went to his rabbi and said, "What about this?" And the rabbi said, "Don't you ever open that book again. We are forbidden from reading the book of Daniel." So many Jews do not read the book of Daniel. You also probably realize the impact of all of this. If you don't believe in an Antichrist, it's much easier to be deceived by him. If you don't believe he sits in the temple of God and declares himself to be God, it's much easier to want to build that temple. If you don't believe he's going to take away sacrifices and offerings, it's much easier to start them. The impacts are simply huge. If you don't know that Jesus commanded all of those in Judea to flee to the mountains when the Antichrist does sit in the temple, you won't flee unless you have the Holy Spirit telling you that. We'll get to that in a second. If you're offered the mark of the beast by this man or face death, well, you would probably take the mark since you don't know better. You don't know it's eternal damnation to take the mark of the beast. Let's listen to a little bit more, and I'll tell you about that dream.
And also, this, I don't know if this is not nice, but when it comes to the eschatology and the difficulties that Christians have with Jews, I really much prefer letting Christians work it out on their terms. This is their thing.
So what's working it out on our own terms? Unfortunately, it usually means arguing with somebody who's Jewish. That is not the right approach in my mind. And here's where my dream comes into play. Last night, I was almost done with this video, but accidentally deleted it. I was frustrated, 6 hours of work down the tubes. But it was too late to start again, so I went to sleep. As I was about to wake up, I had this dream, a very short dream. I was standing in front of a side of a building made out of gray granite or marble. I couldn't tell what the building was. In the dream, I prayed out loud, and my prayer went out of my mouth as visible sound waves and hit the building. As the waves poured over it, the building turned from gray to brilliant white. At that moment, I was awakened by a flash of lightning and a thunderclap. Half awake, I had the sense that this was something from God, and I prayed, "What is that building?" The answer was, everyone has their own building. I then further realized it was a stronghold, and these are only broken down by prayer, and everyone has their own strongholds to break down. So let's take a moment and pray against strongholds within us that might be feelings of anti-Semitism against the Jews for what they believe. Pray to break down our own stronghold first. Second, Jews have their own strongholds, like not reading or understanding Daniel. Pray for those you know and those you don't know in Israel and across the world for the veil of Daniel to fall. The Jewish remnant that God will preserve will need to know the sign of the abomination of desolation in the temple in order to flee to the mountains. Pray that they are told by the Spirit at the right moment. And finally, pray the veil is lifted for all of them as to the true identity of their Moshiach or Messiah, who he really is. Then the building turns from gray to brilliant white. Now pause the video at this moment for a second or two to pray about these 4 things, then come back, because we've got more to tell you. Question you might ask is, why did you tell me you deleted this video the first time by accident, Nelson? And the answer is so that we can include this very important dream so that you could pray about it. Now, let's go back to Eliyahu and keep listening and learning.
John Anderson has an amazing approach. He's a very learned Christian, and he has an approach that he seems to believe there's a lot of misunderstanding of what the Temple of the Antichrist is. The Palestinians make a big deal. They say Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then they have a picture of the Golden Dome. The Golden Dome is not the Aqsa Mosque.
Correct. Yeah, it's the silver dome.
Well, it's dark gray. Yeah, but the Gold Dome is the Dome of the Rock. Kubat Sikra. I keep forgetting how to say it in Arabic. And first of all, those two structures up there, if not the other structures up there, were built out of the temple materials. They didn't bring any building materials up for them.
That's something I did not know.
Yeah, if you go up to the Temple Mount, if you go to the Golden Gate, the what we call Shar Rachamim, the Gate of Mercy, there's steps going down to it, and then there's doorways into this area that they've taken over as a mosque, even though it's a meeting place. It's literally a meeting place for Hamas. It's always been that, which is why it was closed off for a while. Next to those doors is a blue tarp, and under the blue tarp are timbers. Those timbers were from the roof of the Aqsa Mosque, not the Dome of the Rock, the Aqsa Mosque. In the early 1900s, there was an earthquake, and the ceiling of the Aqsa Mosque fell down, and they built a new one, and they took the old timbers that were old and rotting and put them off to the side, and they're still there 100-some years later. Some very clever people managed to get a hold of some of them. They were actually being sold as scrap wood, even being burned by the workers who would go up to the Temple Mount. They'd want to, warm themselves up, and they'd build a fire out of those timbers. They were carbon dated. First temple. The Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are basically built out of first and second temple stones that are covered in tiles, new tiles. The tiles are new.
Okay, first of all, this is the silver-domed Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is the Dome of the Rock, the one with the golden dome. And Eliyahu is starting to build a case that maybe the Dome of the Rock will be the temple of the Antichrist. And the first reason he gives, is that some of the timbers, as you see here, and some of the stones might be originals from the original temple.
Tiles are new. Muslims don't do artwork. It's forbidden for them to draw pictures of things. So they cover it with Arabic calligraphy. And all of the calligraphy, all of it, is hating on Christianity. So if you want to tell me that there's a temple of the Antichrist that comes against Jesus and Christianity, that's kind of my candidate. And unfortunately, I don't know how many Christians know this, but Islam is taking over Jesus. They call him Isa. They say he was a Muslim.
Yes.
They say he was a Muslim, the greatest prophet for Muhammad, which if I was a Christian, that would get me a little bit hot and angry. And that in the end of days, Jesus' job, if you go to Medina, where non-Muslims are not permitted to go, actually they might be permitted in Medina now, they're still not permitted in Mecca, but Muhammad is buried in Medina, and next to his grave is an open grave. And that's saved for Jesus, because in the end of days, Jesus is going to come down from heaven, where he's been. They say that he didn't die. He went up to heaven. They say he's going to go to every single Christian and say, convert to Islam or I will kill you. And Jesus will be killing all the Christians who don't accept Islam, Allah, and Muhammad. And if there's anything that I don't believe in Jesus, but I really respect that Christians have taken him on as their Jesus, because he's a beautiful person. Muhammad, not so much. If you look at how he lived his life. And the last thing, I just cannot imagine Jesus killing his devoted followers. That's just the most anti-Jesus thing I can imagine. So if you want to talk about the temple of the Antichrist, I think it's already there. I think it's the Dome of the Rock.
That's very, very, very interesting. We have postulated about that on our channel as well. Oh yes.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought I was the only crazy person out there.
No, but that's another day's discussion. Why don't we? And that's how we left this portion. We went on to talk more about red heifers. You can look forward to a red heifer episode, maybe almost every week for the next couple weeks, as we
share more of what Eliyahu had to say. In addition, we're going to reach out to him to continue this discussion about the temple of the Antichrist and where it might be, how it might turn out from a Jewish perspective and a Christian perspective, conversation between he and I. But while you're waiting to get ready for that other discussion about the Antichrist's temple and how the Antichrist will fulfill that, I suggest that you watch another video of ours about an archaeologist in the 1960s, Lev Rittmeyer, the most respected archaeologist in Jerusalem, who was given permission to go into the Dome of the Rock. And there he discovered remnants of Solomon's temple. Click right here to see that video and learn what Rittmeyer found and how those structures prove that the Dome of the Rock is actually built on the remnants of Solomon's ancient temple. Till then, this is Nelson, and I will see you there.